You are good to go.
Ready? I'd like to call to order the January 21st, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. At 5 p.m. today, we had a steering committee meeting, which just concluded. That's a meeting with the city council to talk about their budget and talk about our budget. That's now over. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. We've already said the Pledge of Allegiance as a group tonight. Should we say it again? Okay. Do we have consent from 2/3? Then we won't be on. Okay, so we already said the Pledge of Allegiance earlier, so we won't say it again. Next on the agenda is announcements. Do we have any announcements? I have an announcement in February. The school board will be talking about the Williston Road streetscape project, which is shared with the city, which involves talking about transferring some land from the back of Rick Marcotte Central School to the city so that they can widen the sidewalks and make things safer back there. So you'll hear a full discussion of that on February 4th. And we'll also talk about it on February 18th. So if you're interested in that, please come to those meetings. Other announcements?
Yes, I'll share a quick announcement. At our last meeting, I expressed that it was my intention to run for the school board, but just simply due to personal capacity issues, I'll be running. Just wanted to express that truly and sincerely enjoyed my time on this board. And I have other community members use this narrow window here to collect their signatures and submit theirs.
Yes, and that's so. Thank you, and I'm sad to hear that. That's another reminder. Yes. For a second. So if you want to run for school board, there you can go to the city clerk's office and get a paper that I think 30 people have to sign.
Yes, it's also 30 residents. It's also online.
30 registered voters.
30 registered voters.
South Burlington.
South Burlington.
Is it South Burlington?
So if you want to run for school board, now is a good time to plan a party. Yes.
There are 4 seats.
And there are 4 seats available. So it's a great time to get involved.
I will also make an announcement that I wasn't sure if I was running last time we met, but I have decided to run again. So I am in the process of collecting my signatures, and you can just print it right off of the internet if anyone is looking for it. There are only 20 slots on the petition, so make sure you print out 2 so you can fill out 1.5 pages or just 2 full pages just in case. And I Austin understand you won't be able to come back, but I really appreciate having you on the board. So
Thank you.
thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed the time here, and yeah, the community's very against this board and Dr. Park.
Also, community, feel free to reach out to me, and I won't speak with the board, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone is wondering about running and wants more information and understand what it's about. I'm happy to communicate that.
And you might want to get a couple more than 30 because some of the people will turn out not to be registered voters. And so you will end up losing a few signatures. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to review and accept the agenda. So what we currently have on the agenda is comments from the public. Then we have our student representative report. Then we actually have a community forum to talk about Vermont School District redistricting. This is to discuss the possibility of the school board making a statement as other school boards have done in Chittenden County. After that, we will have an action item on the school district redistricting statement. This is not about redistricting schools within our district. This is about redistricting by joining other districts. The next action item is a vote on the meeting warning, which is the official text that will go out on the ballot. I believe that's right.
Yes.
Yep. I've got it right here.
The next action item is high school choice capacity. The next action item is our third reading of a change to our executive limitations related to video surveillance. This will be the fifth time that we have brought this up. And the third time that we have discussed it and had it available for discussion by the board. And so we'll be taking action on it tonight. And then we will have two discussion items, the budget communication plan, talking about now that we have approved a budget, how we communicate that. And also a discussion on how to get started with updating our ends policy, which the superintendent has said is the necessary first step to having a strategic plan, really moving forward with any kind of transformation. We need to look at our ends. And finally, not finally, actually, finally for this page, superintendent report. Then there's the consent agenda, and then in case we need it, an executive session, which we, at this point, I don't know of any topics that we need to cover for the executive session, so we may end up not having that. So does anybody have any comments or amendments to the agenda? So I was gonna offer one amendment to the agenda, and to clarify, we need a 2/3 vote to amend the agenda at this point. I was just wondering if the board wanted to consider again the choice of the 3.4% budget, given the tax increase. So at this time, it's not a time to discuss the merits of that discussion, but it is just wondering if 2/3 of the board would be in favor of literally relitigating, talking about that again. And as context, I have talked to the lawyer and the city. This was actually weeks ago in terms of when the absolute latest time that we could send the final budget to them, and it's today would be the last possible time that we could make any kind of change without seriously inconveniencing everybody. So if there's any interest on the board about relitigating that discussion, I wanted to offer that as an amendment to the agenda. Is there any interest in, so I would be for having that up for a vote again tonight. All right, sounds like a no. Any other changes to the agenda? All right, we'll approve it as it stands. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. There are 3 opportunities for the public to comment right now about anything on the agenda, stuff that's on the agenda, stuff that's not on the agenda. Before the board takes action on an action item, but only on the topic being action, and at a community forum on warrant topics. Tonight is a community forum on one topic. The board will not respond to public comments unless this meeting is a specially designated community forum and the comments on a topic board on the agenda. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. Please do not violate anyone's privacy. Unofficial complaint or grievance cannot be filed during public comment. So do we have any public comment?
Sarah Pineda, nurse leader, and also a South Burlington resident. Just wanted to add some context, but I do realize that the budget has been approved and will move forward to the ballot, but and I appreciate that work, but just wanted to add some context. From a health services perspective, I want to note that while the district may remain within state recommended nurse to student ratios, the approved budget does represent a reduction in nursing capacity. In addition to those ratios, national guidance from organizations such as NASN, which is the National Association of Clinical Nurses, and the AAP, emphasizes staffing models that consider student acuity and complexity, State guidance also recommends and relies on district level nursing leadership to implement state level changes. And reducing that has implications for how health services function day to day and larger issues like chronic absenteeism. So that's all. Thank you for your work. I just wanted to add that context.
Is there any comment online? Any raised hands online?
No raised hands.
All right, we'll move on to next item, which is the student representative report.
This, Wednesday, January 28th is a late start for both the middle and high school, so classes will begin later. So make sure you check your school's individual schedule and your bus schedule.
Today, eighth graders visited from various towns like Georgia, Grand Isles, and North Huron to see what school feels like for ninth grade at South Burlington High School. Current ninth grade student ambassadors volunteered to have students shadow them for the day and show them all the great things we have at South Burlington High School. And we want to say thank you to everyone who visited and the guidance office for their work on today.
Tomorrow, the high school will be hosting the eighth grade academic information night at 7 p.m. So during this event, eighth grade students and their families can come, they can see the high school and receive information from both guidance and current freshmen on the high school experience.
On Thursday, January 29th, the high school will be hosting a post-secondary information session for juniors at 6:30 in the auditorium. So any students that want to learn more about post-secondary opportunities are encouraged to attend. More information will be sent to their emails. That's all.
Thank you. Is there any board questions about the update?
I have a question. Do you ever have an opportunity for folks to register at school for voting? I mean,
Yeah.
that'd be I mean, I can imagine you probably do it in, before a primary election, but I'm wondering how often you do it.
Yeah, I was gonna bring it up actually during our voting discussion, but I was saying it now too. Momen and I's plan for this year, and very similar to last year, is to hopefully give some kind of budget presentation to at least the seniors and the juniors, hopefully during advisory, so that we can keep them informed and stop the spread of misinformation about the budget. And then we always do a voter registration table during at least 3 days lunch period to try to get those 18-year-olds to register before March 4th. That being said, a lot of the senior class does not turn 18 before March 4th, but we usually get about like 15 people to register each year.
Okay.
Is my memory from last year, so that's what me and Moment's plan is. And then
During lunch.
during lunch, and we'll make sure we communicate that over announcements to student.
So when would that be? Probably February?
Yeah, we'll start. Presentations will probably be the mid-February, hopefully, depending on the advisor schedule, and then voter registration will be late.
Really cool. Any other board questions for the students?
Just, I'd love to maybe see your presentations and maybe get some ideas from you about how to present the budget.
Yes, we'll make sure we share. it.
Yeah.
Well, they've been doing a great job. Do you follow them on Instagram?
Yeah.
You've done a great job, the
No, no.
student reps.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Great, well, we are very far ahead of time here. The next item on the agenda is a community forum to discuss Vermont school district redistricting. So this is not about school consolidation. This is not about consolidating schools or redistricting schools within our district. This is a topic about statewide redistricting and a chance for the community to offer any feedback it has, in addition to anything that any of us may have heard from our individual constituents outside of a school board meeting. So is there any community comment on redistricting? Please. First.
Frequent flyer.
I know, what the heck? Sorry.
No,
Oh, thank you for sure.
I sort of have a question, like, I don't know if this is a discussion, but so when we talk about redistricting, I think at first when you hear that, it sounds like really scary because no one wants to lose like their school. But then I was discussing this with, actually a physician that I worked with on some health services stuff that used to live in Hawaii, and she said that there are like very few school districts, but each school act like,
There's one school district in Hawaii.
okay, so,
It's one.
yeah, but from what I understand, like each individual school or group of schools still has their own sort of vibe. So I was just wondering, like, your thoughts if you, with, you know, hearing more.
Yeah, it's a great question. We can't do anything about it. I read the 3 scenarios. The VSBA is also backing, and it is for 11 districts. And it would put us in Chittenden County West with, so it would be, Burlington.
Can I interrupt you for just a
Yeah.
second? I just wanna say that what you're saying is VSBA information, it's not official school board.
No, this
information.
is from Zoe Saunders' office. So that, because she has proposed 3 different things. So okay, fine, I don't
No,
have to
no,
say.
please do, please
But
do.
my point is, this is not up to us nor any other school board. They may be against it, we may be against it, they may be for it. It doesn't matter. This is gonna come from the state. The current, if we go to 11 districts, it's gonna be between 4,000 and 8,000 students. And I don't think we will not get a say. Right now, they have us with, and again, this is not Burtonstone, none of this. We're Burlington, Colchester, Milton, South Burlington, and Winooski. That would be one district.
So I guess
And I believe that implied district would be north of 20,000 students, right? It would be.
No, it would be 10,591 students. It would be the second highest. They want, and then this one in Central Vermont would be the highest at 11,936. So they've reworked it, so nothing's truly outrageous. But we would be the second highest at Central Vermont, and then I think the one with Essex, CV, we can't remember the other one. It would be the third highest. So anywhere between 4,000 and 8,000 students. But again,
What would be ours?
what would be this is a proposal.
Yeah, right, but what was
So it'd be South Burlington, Winooski, and Milton, and Colchester, sorry. Burlington, Colchester, Milton, South Burlington, Winooski. So that's 10,000, so that's the current, that's one of the.
Sarah,
one of
what's
the
your
scenarios.
question? What's your question?
I was just wondering, so say we join districts and will we have an opportunity to like remain any autonomy as South Burlington, like keep our wolves mascot, like as our group of South Burlington schools?
It's a great question.
I'm not sure that we know.
But I don't
Yeah.
think anybody knows.
I think that's a big part of it for the community adopting it is initially I was, you know, it's scary to be like, oh, we're gonna lose our sense of community.
And again,
So I think it's just an important point to see if we would be able to, because my understanding is that's how it functions in Hawaii, but I think that's just an important point of
It's a
discussion.
great question. I would encourage you to go to the state legislature. They are the ones who are actually gonna make the determination.
But I think it's also, it would be interesting to look at Hawaii
Right,
and like,
yeah.
and see if that's what it looks like.
Which
And not
they've
that
done.
that's what it's gonna be, but just, you know, cause that I think is, you know, we're talking about how to present the budget and how to present redistricting or consolidation goes right along with it. Even if we don't have control over what it ends up being, I feel like it's our opportunity to try to really, you know, communicate with the community.
Sarah,
about it.
Edie and Martine were the vice chairs of that committee. They had extensive talks with the Hawaii School District people.
Mhm.
Okay,
So they have a lot of information. And they did really consider creating one district in Vermont. That was on the table there for a minute.
okay.
And then I don't know what they learned. But yeah, they have a lot of really good information. And if you go on the Agency of Education website, there's information there. I tried to read through, but it right now, nobody really knows.
Right.
So these are
Yeah.
really good questions. Yeah.
Can I just address the,
Serve no purpose to go after the name and the mascot, right? Like,
Yeah,
and the teams, it's not the purpose of redistricting, and so I would hope that would be the very last part of the conversation and defer to
right.
schools.
I just think it's just, the community would accept, like, be more accepting of it if that, information was clear.
Right.
well, I just want to go to something that Laura said about how there's nothing we can do.
Mhm.
And I think that we actually have a lot of a voice as a school board in terms of influencing the state and, one of the opportunities that we have, since we haven't made a statement yet for or against, is to use that voice that we have to affect the legislature. Because if we speak as a school board, if we make, it's not common that we make a statement like this. It's not common that we make a statement. I think in my time in school board, I think we made one or maybe one. As opposed to just individual school board members making their opinions known. So, I do think that if we make a statement, the Secretary of Education will hear it, the governor will hear it, the legislature will hear it. And hopefully that will give us, just maybe a little bit more say in the future of South Burlington.
We have Diane online.
Please,
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Sarah.
Would you recognize Diane?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. First, I want to give a shout out to our student representatives as part of the high percentage in South Burlington of voters that don't have students in the district any longer. I feel like you are always well prepared and kind of keep it real as someone that's no longer connected with the school. With that in mind, I just wondered the work group that looked at the two models of potentially to redistrict school districts, were students included in those groups? I think sometimes folks that might experience a high impact are not included in such groups and may have questions that are highly relevant that other people may not have thought of. I don't know all the questions to ask, quite honestly, and I appreciate your having this forum for residents to listen in on and learn. Thank you.
We have, is it?
I don't know if there were students.
Yeah, I have no, yeah, again, I would point people toward Martine Hewlett and Edie Wayne. I just forgot her last name. They were the co-chairs. I would, and also Secretary Saunders, if you go to her website, she has information, you can ask them any questions.
And I guess before I think one of the intention of this community forum is not to provide official information, because as Laura was saying, there really is no official, like the South Burlington School District doesn't have any official information about redistricting. It's all state level stuff. I think the question, the inspiration behind having a statement around it, a community forum around it, is to say, from what we know, from the limited information that we have, like, how can we put together a cohesive statement and then make our voices heard? So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information to give. Now, Jean Marie may have more information, but.
Just two comments I wanted to share with the board. I was a school board chair as our school district and supervisory union went through the Act 46 school consolidation process, and it was very intensive. It took a lot of our board time and energy of many, many meetings, really slogging through all of the details around what we do have control over and what we don't. How do we close the school? How do we don't? How do we not do that? And so there are a lot of things that you could be in control of when we went through that process. I would encourage you as board members, and particularly you, Seamus, as the board chair, to really have your voice heard at the State House, because so if they decide that we're gonna merge with whatever these towns are that they've assigned us to, then someone has to decide what that board makeup looks like. how many seats does this town get at that table? How are those assigned and then you have to create all the policies that are gonna operate that district, right? So, you know, I'm really glad to hear that you are spending time trying to get community input about what this looks like, and it is such a whole new concept for the state to consider. But make sure that you as board members and you as board chair definitely air your opinion, because I think that that's valuable information that the state needs to hear. My second comment is also kind of related to school redistricting. You know, I am new to this role, but I spent some time this fall with Dr. Clark at a VSBA conference and got to meet some of my colleagues around the state, connected with some of our friends at the Burlington School District. And to that end, we are having a very, very early stage kind of brainstorming conversation next week with them, with my friends in the business office and the Burlington School District business office, to just start kind of spitballing ideas of redistricting or not. What are the ways that potentially we could partner that would make us be more efficient? And I will tell you that I'm a girl who, when you give me a broad idea like that, I immediately go right down to the weeds of like, all right, how can we make this work? And I'll share with you that the one idea that I have, and actually the Burlington School District finance manager was kind of courting me in this idea. As you know, we have done a really impressive job building our transportation team. We have a new manager who's been with us for almost a year. Yeah, those of you who ride the buses potentially, or are parents of children on the buses, we stopped our rolling cancellation of buses last fall, right around Thanksgiving. So like a year ago. And so others around us are like, hey, lady, how did you make that happen? And we would like that to have the same effect in our school district. So Burlington uses the city bus, GMT, to do the majority of their transporting of their school children, but they also do have a small number of buses that they have in-house and transport primarily their special ed students in their buses. Our transportation manager, and I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to because I think this is such a great idea. Our transportation manager, we kind of stole from Green Mountain Transit. So he spent many years working for Green Mountain Transit, public transportation. So he brings to us now the knowledge of how the city bus system works. He's now spent a year with us understanding how school busing works. And wouldn't it make sense if we could like bring Burlington under our umbrella, so that if they have like 4 buses that they're running, we're running 20. Like if we could somehow partner to have his expertise bring everybody under that one umbrella, that we're all employing them together, getting everybody where they need to be. You know, it's a unique situation having a supervisor who has that background working with the city bus company. But so those are the kinds of ideas that we're just beginning to think about. That work will start next week. Maybe it'll go nowhere. Maybe something great will come out of it. But redistricting or not, there hopefully are ways that we can be more efficient and more thoughtful with the ways that we and our neighboring districts are spending our money. So just wanted to share. Thanks all.
I think that's just with that, yeah. Vermonters are stronger together.
Collaborate.
That's a comment. Would you recognize Elizabeth?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I probably should have just stayed there, Seamus. Just a couple of quick comments, and thanks for providing the opportunity to have this conversation. One of the things that I think about, and I do think it makes sense as South Burlington is a leadership district within the state to weigh in with some kind of statement, is I think it's incumbent as this, train leaves the station, that the districts who are going to be impacted keep the process honest. And one of the things that is driving this is really cost reductions and sustainability. But I also think about the questions that may be asked, like, how does South Burlington benefit? Where are the gaps that have been identified relative to the values that South Burlington holds for its students. And I've heard, the vocations of the tech side of the equation mentioned several times over different meetings. So, having a clear understanding where there's an expectation of a large district to benefit from the process. And then again, where can South Burlington contribute its leadership and expertise? And I think Jean Marie just gave a good example there in one of the operations that might be transportation, but there may be other areas, operational issues that would include efficiencies where South Burlington may be a leader relative to neighboring districts. So I also think communicating as this process moves forward, the values that a large community has and a leadership community for its students is important, and weighing that against the process that is unfolding is really important. And then I can't help but think of the link to the city's recently adopted economic development strategic plan that really has identified industry clusters that drive job growth, and think about how those strategies can be woven together. And those would include aerospace and companies like Beta, chips and electrical manufacturing, digital services, environmental consulting, and life sciences. And I think South Burlington has a rich history of partnering with different organizations that maybe isn't necessarily seen around the state. So that could be an area of contribution. But again, my thoughts are a little bit disjointed, but I do think a seat at the table with a statement that represents a significant district and kind of keeps the process honest would be very helpful. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Any more comment?
I have lived through a consolidation, Essex Junction merged with the town, and that did take a long time. I don't think it's saving the money. So it is. Yeah, I'm just saying I just don't think that that's our job. People are getting paid to do that job, but I think, maybe making a statement in support of it. Because right now, if most districts are saying they don't want to do it, maybe don't want to ask our opinion if we're in favor of it, like get some feedback from us. That's the only way I can think of to have a say, because the legislatures are we'll feel strong, we should take it there. So.
And I think what you're saying also is that there's some urgency too, because this, we wouldn't want the legislature to move forward without us having said our piece and maybe having been asked to come and testify for them,
Yeah, they want to talk to friendly with.
I very much support us putting out a statement in favor of redistricting. As board members know, this was one of the early sort of questions and issues that I had raised. I think the map makes too much sense for us to not be considering this, and the tone of surrounding districts resisting it allows us to stand out and maybe have a greater voice at the state level, proactively recognizing the inevitability of what Vermont will almost certainly have to do one way or another. And to put real specifics to it, hearing that maybe a proposed district might be 10,000 or 11,000 students, of which we are a part of, we may decide or to express, it's not our choice, we may decide to express that is too, right, that we would prefer to be in a 5,000 or 6,000 student district, or maybe that 11,000 is a size that we embrace. So there are some specifics like that where maybe we can reflect our community's goals and values proactively by being one of the only districts, at least in this area, that is leaning into the inevitability of this.
So Jean Marie mentioned was, there's going to be discussions about how to constitute the resulting school boards. And I think one of the things they say about power is that if you want power, you probably shouldn't have it. And so I think that this is also our way of saying, do the right thing for the students, do the right thing for the taxpayers. And if it means that I'm not sitting in this chair as the school board chair, like that's okay with me. There's a necessary transformation that I think we're seeing in the state, and we shouldn't be afraid of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there any other community comment on this? Anybody online?
No interest.
I was just not looking at anybody, but staff members are reminded that they are allowed to make public comment. There's specific protection for them.
I think it's interesting. Joe, what's the biggest school district that you worked at in, Ohio?
15, no, at Westerville, 15,000 students,
Right.
26 schools.
So that's the number that Vermonters are just like, what? So I think it's an interesting opportunity to have a superintendent who has been in charge of a school that big and that it doesn't have to be that scary. And I also think South Burlington, we're in a unique situation. Our school's not going to close and we are very lucky for that. And I recognize that this opportunity will close some schools in Vermont, and that is very sad for towns. And so I try to think about us as being like sort of a little bit luckier in that department, and like how can we rise up and like make something good out of what we've got, and feel grateful that we still get to be South Burlington, even if we do mix with other people who that could just be more people to share their thoughts and they'll grow our community bigger. So anyway.
Okay, I mean guilted into.
Yeah, so I saw you make eye contact, so I just, as a staff member, as someone that is new to Vermont, and comes from, well, I'll just say it, I grew up in LA. Huge. Vermont is so very small compared to what I am used to. And the organizations that I've worked with before. A lot of people that I hear from the staff are worried about losing their job. So can I sit here and say, I want to merge, but I still want to be the HR director? Yes, I absolutely do. But do I want to be the HR director in the 10,000 student organization? That's a lot for one person to do. So there's so many things that are up in the air that you don't know what's going to happen. But at the same time, remembering my why and why I wanted to come to this school district is because of those students and the future of our world. And we need to do what's best for them. And if that's this, great. I think, now I know South Burlington leads the charge. We are one of those, and just like Emily said, we are the lucky ones that we have a lot to offer. We're kind of I'm gonna say the mentor, or we're gonna be the ones that are gonna be helping other smaller school districts. We have more resources than others. So I feel like that'll be doing good work. But you're very right. Staff are nervous. Am I gonna lose my job? We're already making cuts just on our own. So it is a concern, but at the same time, like Laura said, this is not we're gonna do what they tell us to do, so, but yeah, just offering these.
Yeah, and Daisy in the Essex Westford district, nobody lost their job.
Great.
So that's what I mean.
Yeah, I just hear going from 2,000 to 10,000, that's.
We went from two
Yeah.
superintendents to one. That's
Right.
really specific.
And Burlington has so for example, their HR department is 5 times larger than ours. So yeah, I don't have those resources, and I don't have people specifically assigned to do a lot of what they do. I don't have an assistant HR director. I don't have 2 assistant HR directors. So yeah, there's a lot of difference. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any other community comment? Anybody online? Are we ready to move on to the action item?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Vermont School District Redistricting Statement. Does the school board wish to make a public statement about school district redistricting as other school boards have done? So to clarify, this is not about consolidating schools within our district. This is about statewide district level redistricting. And this will be the third time that we've talked about it in the last 3 meetings.
Cause you have a statement, right?
I had the statement that I gave that the board helped me draft was really non-committal. It was we were interested in BOCES. We're not saying we're for it or against it, but we're open to talking about it. It was not as, I don't think it's as forceful as what the board's looking for now.
And you gave that in testimony and when there's.
I gave, yeah, at one of the committee visits.
Great.
That statement was much more to our surrounding communities to see if there were already early willing suitors with whom we could have a friendly early dialogue with. None emerged. This would be much more forceful and directed possibly at the state level.
So to start the bidding, I imagine a simple motion like I move that the South Burlington School Board should make a public statement in support of frank discussion and open dialogue, and specifically in support of and specifically say that we are open to the idea of school district redistricting and joining with other districts to provide better academic opportunities and also be more cost efficient. Something along those lines. I was thinking, and to allow the school board chair to release a press release to that effect. So it's not just a statement that we make and put in our minutes, but it's also something that I would release to the press, forward to the agency of education, forward to the governor, forward to the legislature, all those things. So how does the general concept of a motion like that strike you?
Sounds good to me.
I support the motion, and I would ask, although it doesn't need to be a part of the motion, that when we do that letter, we actually go as far as to say, we support this. Here are some of the benefits we see of this. Here are some of the things that South Burlington as a district believes it can offer partnering districts. And here are some of the things that we might benefit from through partnering with other districts or combining.
So my only pushback on that a little bit is that I don't want to put ourselves in a position tonight where we can't decide about all of that. I think there's a follow-up. Like, I think that it's now that the legislature and the governor are talking about it. And so it's now that we should come out with just a basic statement of, we're open to it, talk to us. We're, we're ready to move into the future. And then I think like what you were saying earlier, like maybe there is community opinion about 6,000 versus 13,000 or 10,000 or whatever. And I think that if we can get a seat at the table, if we can say we're leading, like Davey was saying, we can show that we're leading on this, then that's when to bring up the specifics of, more specifics. And it also gives the community, like, let's say this comes out in the news that our school district, our school board, unlike other ones, came out, maybe that will bring people out of the woodwork in the community in South Burlington to say, hey, this is what I'm concerned about. And then we can collect that feedback and in the second round, bring that.
Is your hope to actually have the statement written tonight or to agree
No.
to make a statement?
My intention, and again, we could change it, is to only make a motion tonight that says that we are open to discussion. We are specifically open to school district redistricting, which is a step beyond BOCES, and authorize me to write a press release to that effect.
I do wanna appreciate though that we brought in both sides of that coin, right? When we get to that point where we're having a conversation about what the great South Burlington can offer, we have a lot to learn. I mean, I was at the VSBA conference and had a great conversation with Mr. Chalia and Winooski. We've got some stuff to learn. So I just wanted to, I really appreciate that. I'm really sorry.
Indeed.
I might be out of order for saying.
I got a quick question. I don't know a whole lot about redistricting, so I'm having my playing like a 5 moment. From what I've heard from the board, it sounds like redistricting is completely awesome and I see no downsides. So what I'm wondering is why, like, what are the downsides that are making other school districts not want to, I guess, go forward with it?
It's a big change.
Besides, it's like a lot of work, I get that,
It's
it's
a huge amount of work efficacy.
I would love to hear from your experience, Laura, having gone through it. I would just state based on my research and reading on it, most of the resistance that I've seen is a concern about a loss of identity or local culture, which is something that Vermont certainly prides. And is a big part of, Vermont identity. And also implicit in that, and I'm guessing and projecting a little bit here, there's also a fear of a loss of, roles and opportunities, right? If there's a small district, that becomes part of a larger district, there might be one less role for principal or other administrators. And I don't know that that's not explicitly stated. I hear that in some of the resistance, but Laura, what other resistance did you
No,
encounter?
that's about right. And then there's like the fear of losing jobs. I mean, then you go from 2 unions to 1. But a lot of things do stay the same. They're all legit fears. Totally legit. And I just don't think it is going to be easy, I'm not saying just because it's hard, it's the wrong thing to do. I'm not saying that at all. Just saying that sometimes the right thing to do is really hard.
Those are legitimate concerns.
But they're legitimate
They-
concerns, yeah.
The question is whether or not they are still things that are worth doing in light of, so not to make light of those challenges, even though I'm in support of it, it is a bumpy.
Yeah, and let's face it, we went from like 5 buildings to 10. That's a lot to manage, and then so that's just.
So the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston did a big report on, redistricting, and some of the things that they specifically mentioned as challenges to redistricting are things like increased transportation costs. And also there could be a need for capital spending on, like, well, we're going to, maybe close a school here, but we have to much improve another school over here to take all those kids and put them together. So net, you could argue that it's better for the students in that nicer, newer school, but on the other hand, there is a capital expenditure upfront.
And maybe a longer bus ride.
Yeah.
And if a small town loses their school, that's detrimental to a town to lose their school. And I think that's scary. And I think mostly it's the unknowns that it gets the big pushback, which I totally understand. And change is incredibly challenging for a lot of people. And when there's, like Laura said, we don't have any control, that is an automatic pushback. So I think those kinds of things are why people are opposed. Yeah,
Also,
that would be what comes to my mind when I think of what I don't like about it. Like I am saying I'm open to it, but I am concerned about what could go wrong or what we might lose. But there's also things we might gain, and change is the only constant. So at some point we have to accept it.
Can we ask one of the legislatures to come in? Talk to
Oh,
us?
yeah, absolutely.
I think we should ask either Martine to come or Edie. Or now, but they're not on the education committee, whoever's, or.
Yeah, well,
I think that would be better. I would oppose to bringing somebody in who is openly opposed to redistricting. I don't think that serves any purpose, and I honestly believe that's why it failed to begin with. Because the chairs openly stated that they were against it. It was like, what else was gonna be?
Because there was no.
I don't even.
Well, I can give you, okay, that's fine. All right, great. So do you want?
Well, I don't wanna ask you to
well, I
speak
don't
for
think
other
that was
people.
necessarily what
I
I
actually
was
was-
suggesting. I think it was more of an informational.
Yeah, it was not.
And if the concern was about bringing somebody who was against it, I think we could similarly just bring somebody who's for it and somebody who's against it.
Well, that would
Yeah,
be
that'd be
perfectly
interesting.
acceptable, but I don't want all of my information from somebody who doesn't wanna see it happen.
Ally, you want-
Yeah, we kind of just talked about it, and I don't think this is a reason we shouldn't pass a statement, but do you see the infrastructure aspect of it being a large challenge, like the fact Burlington is getting a new high school, and then if we join with them in our high school is.
So I'll tell you
Do you know what
my,
I mean? Like, do you
yes.
think that will be a?
let me tell you 2 things about that. First of all, my biggest fear in this whole thing, going to Moment's question and also to your question, my daughter is in 5th grade. And if school consolidation goes forward, we live 3 blocks from the high school, and we bought the place so that we could live next to the high school. Emily said we're not gonna close our high school, but you know, who knows? It could be out of commission during the years that my children are in high school, right? And, you know, and so that's like my fear, but I think again, like, what is the values that I wanna teach my kids? It's like, sometimes you have to get on the bus for a while. You know, sometimes you have to sacrifice for the greater good. I think that's like something that this whole country could learn a little bit right now, but that's my greatest fear, is that we, you know, that this high school goes out of commission for a few years, specifically in the years that my kids are gonna be there. But the flip side of that, in terms of infrastructure costs, is that a big interest I have is reestablishing the legitimacy of public education and the willingness of the community, not just the school community, but the non-school community, to put money into public education and not look to alternatives like school choice, school vouchers, privatization, charter schools, all that stuff, right? And I think that if we have a more rational cost structure, if we don't have, what is it, 250 school districts and 80,000 students, then that moves the conversation forward with those skeptical voters who are skeptical of supporting all these little things, but maybe more ready to support something that's bigger, stronger, all that. Great question.
So James, we're at the 35-minute mark for the community forum. Are you looking for a motion or?
So I can propose a motion if we don't want to discuss it anymore.
Please.
So I would entertain a motion to, sorry, let me pull it up here. I would entertain a motion to state publicly that the South Burlington School Board supports frank discussion and prompt action to address cost and academic proficiency concerns, and specifically is open to the idea of consolidation with other school districts, and authorize the chair to release a press release to this effect. Austin moves, Jen seconds. Any discussion? And this is an action item, so we are accepting, again, public comment before we vote on this. All right, Joe, you haven't weighed in at all. Do you have any?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of concerns. I listened to Sarah's concern about, you know, losing the identity, but this I know. I was not aware of the districts that we had been looped in with.
Again, it's not.
No, and I know it's not gospel. I know it's not actually happening, but pretend that did happen. We're not all of a sudden going to only have one high school. You won't be able to do that, right? So districts will retain some of their identity for some time. There are facilities issues we're gonna have to figure out, but they're not going to put kids in worse buildings. They're gonna put them in better buildings and maybe have to create new buildings for that. So I think that's a positive. Some of the concerns come with not just everything everybody else said, but like loss of programs. If there's a special program that is unique to this school district that they've always had, that we just get it, but nobody else does, and time comes for budget cuts, that could be, it could be a favored program that goes away. So I'm supportive of the board making a statement. I think that I think in addition to being good for this area, I think this is really good for smaller districts, because kids in South Burlington have a lot of opportunities for coursework and extracurriculars and athletics. Kids in rural parts of the state do not, and I think that redistricting is really beneficial for them for that reason. I think we get the right thing.
Any other board discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, the next item on our agenda is a vote on the fiscal year 2027 annual school district meeting warning. So.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah.
Read this out. So this is the language that goes on the ballots based on the decisions that the board has recently made about what the budget size will be, the 3.4 increase, and also about the capital reserve fund question. So now Laura's going to read.
So warning, City of South Burlington School District 2026 annual meeting, the legal voters of the South Burlington School District are hereby notified and warned to be at their respective polling places at the Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School at 500 Dorset Street, Orchard School at 2 Baldwin Avenue, the Gertrude Chamberlain School at 262 White Street, and the Kevin Dorn Senior Center at South Burlington City Hall at 180 Market Street on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, at 7 o'clock in the morning, at which time the polls will open until 7 o'clock in the evening, at which time the polls will close. To vote by Australian ballot on the following articles. Article 1, election of officers. On the first Tuesday in March 2026, the voters of the city shall elect from among the legal residents of the city 1 member for the remaining 2 years of a 3-year term, 1 member for a 3-year term, and 2 members for 2-year terms. Thereafter, the election of school directors shall be for the length of the term of the member whose term is expired. Article 2, budget. Shall the voters of the South Burlington School District approve the board to spend $73,939,121, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. The South Burlington School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $15,696.08, which is 8.52% higher than per pupil education spending for the coming year. Article 3, additional appropriation to districts capital reserve fund authorized. Shall the South Burlington School District's Board of Directors be authorized to allocate the audited surplus funds for the 2025 fiscal year in the amount of $2,554,157.57 to the district's capital reserve fund, which in combination with funds previously allocated or allocated in the future may be expended for future capital improvements as determined by such board and detailed in the district's facility stewardship plan, as the same may be amended from time to time in accordance with the requirements of 24 ESA 2804. Let's see, only places are at the Frederick H. Tuttle Middle School at 500 Dorset Street, the Orchard School at 2 Baldwin Avenue, the Gertrude Chamberlain School at 262 White Street, and the Kevin Dorn Senior Center in South Burlington City Hall and 180 Market Street. Voters are to go to the polling place in their respective district. The legal voters of the city of South Burlington School District are further warned and notified that a public information meeting will be held to discuss Articles 1, 2, and 3 on Monday, March 2nd, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. at City Hall Auditorium, Market Street. The legal voters of the city of South Burlington School District are further notified that letter qualification, registration, and absentee voting relative to said annual meeting shall be as provided in chapters 43, 51, and 55 of Title 17 Vermont statutes. And there is.
Thank you very much. So is there any board comment on the language? I'm pretty sure the state law has a template that we just fill out.
Yeah, it would be for us to say, no, don't do that.
I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2027 annual school district meeting warning as presented in the board materials for this meeting, and it's just read by Clerk Williams. Jen moves.
I'll second.
Emily seconds. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment? As this is an action item, we are accepting public comment on.
One on our motions.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2027 public high school choice capacity, Title 16, Section 822A. Can I ask you, Joe, to?
Yes, so this is not related to tuition-based students that come from the islands, right? This is the board setting the tuition, setting the limit of the number of kids that we can accept without tuition into our district. We're required to set a minimum of 1. And no more. And the reason that this district has always set a limit of one is because no funding comes with these students. These are not tuition students. These are students who, in Ohio, we would call them open enrollment students, who would come in without any funding and would use our resources. So the recommendation is to do what we've done in years past, which is to set the capacity of one student at the high school.
Is there any board discussion on that point? or
Question,
board
do we
questions?
ever accept more than them? Or did we mostly accept 0?
You have to accept one. And my understanding from Pat Burke is that we'll get a few kids will apply and they do a random lottery to select the one. So there is one of these students in each grade level of Boston. And this would be a freshman, so there'll be one more freshman.
And is the cycle only in that registration period, or can it happen at any point in the year?
No, it happens in the registration period.
If a person is accepted, do they have to reapply each year?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think so, but I'm speculating. I don't,
I do not know for sure, but based on a issue the board faced early on, I don't think so, because there's some commitment somewhere in our charter that you have to continue providing services to students. But
Because they have to pay every year. I don't know, we should find out.
well, these ones don't.
Right.
Right, but tuition students do pay, so why would?
It is not specific to a tuition student. I'm thinking about another situation where it basically the board had, or the district had an obligation to continue providing educational services to a student. Without revealing personal details. And so my understanding, based on that and using the same principle that applied there, I would think that these students would have to apply every year.
That would be more humane, sir.
Yeah, you would hope that once they were accepted, that if they wanted to continue, they could.
Yeah. The continuation is part of the grace that we give students if they didn't have to move schools.
Is there any other board question or comment? So is the motion you need to set the capacity at 1?
Yes, the motion is to accept the document that was provided to you by Delina. I wrote about it in the board update last week. And yes, it is setting it at.
Great. So I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2027 public high school choice capacity, Title 16, Section 822A, recommendation of 1 as presented in the board packet. Dan motions, Austin seconds. Is there any discussions?
I think we just actually have a question, and that is, how does transportation work for that? Is there any requirement for transportation? Or it's just strictly for the tuition for acceptance?
There's no tuition. This is a tuition-free student. They provide their own transportation, but they can come to our school without any funds falling.
And this is an action item, so we are accepting public comment. Public comment.
So just another question. So this would be an example also of students that are not necessarily in an area where there would be school choice.
Right.
It would be students that perhaps are in the new ski, but they want to come to South Burlington, and so they have the chance to enter this lottery system. And we allow up to one.
Exactly. Not school choice kids.
Yeah.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. So the next item on the agenda is an action item on a change to our executive limitations around video surveillance. This is our third reading of the proposed changes to the policy. It's the 5th time that we've mentioned it in a public meeting. And the general idea is that we are allowing principals and administrators more access to video And that's why we've been sure to talk about and warn it, 3 times and tell the community we're gonna talk about it 5 times. So Joe, do you wanna just give a reminder of what we're talking about here again?
Yeah, just a reminder, this is what the principals will tell you is really a safety initiative that currently, anytime that they need to review tapes, either to look at a behavior that has been reported to them or something that they feel as if might be going down in the moment. They have to submit a request to me and the police chief to get permission to do that. And then the tech guys have to go in and find the video and upload it to a file and share with the principals, which is my understanding is it's unusual even throughout Vermont. Typically, principals have the ability to have live access to the cameras and to the recordings and can access those as needed. It takes a lot of red tape out of finding these sorts of things and speeds it up, speeds up the process. So we recommend that you approve this.
Is there any further board comment on this topic? All right, I would entertain a motion to approve the revision to executive limitation 2.1 regarding video surveillance as presented in the board materials.
Second.
Sorry.
I'll move.
Sorry. Laura moves. Austin seconds. Is there any discussion? And since this is a action item, we are accepting public comment on this.
No, we're not.
Okay, board discussion. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2027 budget communication plan. So we just approved a budget, just approved the ballot language, and so now topic while we're here in forum is how are we going to tell the community about it? Obviously, it's not the be all end all discussion of it, but we have to start thinking about precisely those communication concerns that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, who wants to start the bidding on how we should talk to, or how we should organize how we should talk about it? We could have follow-up meetings, we could have a committee.
I'd love to hear, Joe, your thoughts, or perhaps how you've done this in other areas to get the most traction across your community. Because I have a few ideas, but I'd love to hear any suggestions you might have first.
Yes, I think, first of all, we need to spiff up our website. We have a lot of documents that are prepared that have not been placed yet, and we're waiting to be placed until we're made final decisions and whatnot. So that could go out immediately. We can afford to social media. When I met with the Rotary Club last week, and we were going through the 3 questions meeting, and they talked about the need for communication. I asked those folks there who are elderly, maybe, and not without kids in the district. And I said, where do you get the majority of your information? And their answer was Front Porch. They use Front Porch more than any other means. And so right now the district does not have a Front Porch subscription. We get 5 seats from the city. So I've asked Delina to look in the district, getting our own Front Porch thing. So we can actually have our logo on it and get messages out that way. I've been using AI to come up with some videos that are going to be helpful to explain what this is. I have one prepared that I'd love to share with the board and probably will in this week's update. Other than that, I'm speaking to Rotary next week. Seamus and I did the TV show last night, and whatever. And of course, the board budget vote is going to be published next week. It's not going to be mailed out. That's a huge mailer, but we could do a smaller mailer if the board wanted to do that.
So I have a couple thoughts about that. Also, is I think that as I was told very early, actually before I became a school board member, it's really the job of the board to pass the budget that we approved. It's the board's job to advocate for effectively Can't necessarily spend money on that because state law says we can only inform the public. We can't push them towards a particular thing. We can't spend money on that, but as politicians, as people with voices, as people who are advocating for things, we are allowed to advocate for it. Joe's role is technical expert, non-political, nonpartisan. So, I think it's important to have both a really simple explanation of what's going on from Joe. And then I think it's also for those people who voted for the budget, especially to have a political voice, which doesn't mean that we have to release a unanimous board statement about it. People who voted for the budget, especially, I think should feel obligated to speak out for it in the most effective public ways that they can do that. And you don't need a unanimous board to do that. So I just want to say there's a little bit of a difference between what Joe does and what we do, but both are necessary. And when one of those is lacking, then we have problems.
That's a good clarification. I will not be encouraging anybody to vote for or against. I will be giving facts about the budget. This is how much it is, this is what it might cost you, and this is what reduction will make.
So I guess the meta question here is like, how do we even want to approach this? Like, do we want to pick a committee? Do we want to just keep talking about this in every single meeting? Do we want to hire a consultant?
I don't think we should hire a consultant. The messaging should come from us as the stewards of the budget, personally, that's how I feel. I don't know the right format to communicate this or who the right person is or the right medium, but I think it is important to recognize that this is a heavy burden on taxpayers, that we don't treat that lightly, that we're aware of that, and that we made the best decision we could, balancing all factors in front of us. I think it's just important to recognize, I don't want the taxpayers to think that we treated this number, which we know will be a burden on them, lightly, and that we arrived at this number after full consideration, and not to play victim, but also to point out that many of these factors are outside of our control and our state level factors. We don't need to beat that horse to death, but it's probably important that the voters know that, we did what we could, and this is what we believe was the best balance as a board. Was the way our votes came out.
Yeah. And I have a follow-up question to that, but I do want to also ask the higher level question to the board of, do we want to have committee or do we not? What's people's feeling about that?
Committee would be appropriate. Would be good. Appropriate.
How do other people feel about, because the alternative to having a committee is that we all have to do it in quorum, which means that we would certainly have to do it. We'd have to talk about it at every single meeting, and we probably would also have to have a special meeting or two to, to get the ball rolling.
The committee is the right answer. It allows us to move faster and be more nimble.
Are you talking about an advocacy committee or an informative committee or one that looks right?
So I would say it would be an advocacy committee that is not allowed to spend money. Because that's what state law says.
Right.
So that's two people saying yes, committee.
I would support a information committee. I would retract my statement as a advocacy.
No, I mean, as Joe said, Joe's not gonna try and sway people one way or the other. It's just about getting the information out.
But that's
Accurate
his-
information out,
But what about our role?
accurate information out to the public.
Yeah, I think our role is, I agree. I believe our role is accurate information to the public and ultimately letting the public vote with the material information we give them. I do not believe our role is, it was just my personal opinion to state that clearly. I do not believe our role here is to try and convince the community of any vote. It is to say, here's the budget that we believe, is in the best interest of the community based on all the factors that we considered. Here are some of the factors that were in front of us. Now you vote whether or not you agree or disagree. That's how I feel our stewardship is, and maybe we disagree on that.
Well, I'm basing this on, before I became a school board member, I talked to a principal who I have a very long tenured principal who I have immense respect for. And that person said to me, it's really up to the school board to pass the budget. And the way that I interpreted that was beyond just informing, because certainly we, at least in years past, have sent out enormous mailers with an unbelievable amount of information. But that also meant like drafting a budget that the community would pass in the first place, and second of all, advocating for it effectively, you know, showing up at Shaw's and, you know, saying, hey, guys, you should vote for it. So if we're, and I'm not saying that we have to do that, but I'm saying that we should consider as a board that it may be our job to do more than just inform.
But here's the thing, if the vote had been 7-0 last week, everybody agreed this was the thing to do. You know, then you could advocate for it. There's a 4-3 vote. So. My opinion is it should be informed.
It almost
So
feels
you
like a
speak-
personal conflict, right? So I publicly stated I would not vote for this budget as a community member. It would be disingenuous at a minimum for me to try to tell people they should vote for it when I myself am.
Well, we're supposed to speak as one voice, even if you're in the, even if you don't agree with the vote.
I absolutely agree. I really do.
That's how.
Well, hold on, one
This
person at a
is
time.
the-
You wanna finish your point and then we'll go to Laura? Sorry, please go ahead. There's no
So
rush.
believe me, I've struggled with this, right? Because I absolutely support the voice of the board. The majority spoke. That was the decision. But my understanding of the decision was the number that goes on the ballot, and I will be the wind under our sails, right? To say, yes, it goes on the ballot. But for me to have publicly stated that I'm not going to vote for it, the budget feels different because we have a secondary action as community members to vote separately from what we decide here. I am under no obligation to vote yes, simply because the board said yes. I am also a community member, I'm a taxpayer and a parent. And I have my right to make a choice under those circumstances. And so in this one case, the way our governance system is set up, I'm stuck.
Yeah, I wanna talk about that, but Laura, would you like to?
You can vote however you want, secret ballot. You can do whatever you want. It's just my understanding that we speak as one voice. So if they had gone the other way, I would have to be opposed. And how I vote is a different matter. But we are supposed to be, that was the majority that spoke, so we are supposed to be.
Can I just ask can I ask a question about, I think, just from my own understanding, when you said we are out there supporting that. How do we all interpret that? Because it's supporting and advocating. And I felt very conflicted about my vote, yet I support the number we're putting to the ballot because the community came out, in my opinion, and said, that's the number we want, and that's the voice that I heard, so I said, if that's the voice I'm hearing, I'd like to give the community that chance. So I support that because it's what I heard from the community. But I'm not sure how far that support should go to advocating to saying, this is necessarily the best and right number.
This is my fourth budget. I have never heard such a conversation, and we all did not agree.
Right.
This is uncharted territory for me, that once we voted, that was it. You supported it, and if we don't support it, then who will? I mean, if we can't get behind it, and
Well-
this is why we're not we're elected officials, but we're not really politicians.
Right.
We're not representatives, we're not senators. We have to speak as one voice. That's what makes school board a little weird.
Well, can I follow up on that?
And hard.
Well, I just have a legit, just a question. It's one who's been through the budget process multiple times. And I don't want to splice and wordsmith here,
No.
but to me, I do think there's a distinction between supporting and advocating. And I'm curious, when you say support the budget, I fully support the budget we're putting out there to the community. I am curious if when you say support, does that also mean advocate?
That's a good question. I've not been on the budget committees. My experience is that this board just could not get a budget committee off the ground. Because it's a lot harder to do than you think. Coordinating two people, it's much of this. I think we can all agree on correct information. I
Yes.
think we can
Yeah.
at least do that, and then in front, definitely front page reports form. That is, that is what most people use, so. If the board's divided on advocacy, then let's give out information.
Well,
But I just feel like we gotta sell this, we gotta sell this.
So there, let me reference a couple different things.
Yeah, I don't see how you can avoid it, but go ahead.
So state law, well, let me start with, we had a training last year with Pietro Lynn. And he was training us on what it means to like speak with one voice. And so he gave us a couple different scenarios and he said, for example, would it be okay for the school board to tell the superintendent, for one school board member or two school board members to tell the superintendent to, do X thing with the program? And the answer is no, because the board, when we're instructing the superintendent to do something, speaks as one voice in terms of like, we pass a majority vote and then that's the voice of the board. That's what the superintendent has to do. On the other hand, he said explicitly, can the school board pass a budget and then individual school board members, and this was the explicit example he gave, stand outside of a voting place with a sign that says, this is a terrible budget, don't vote for it. And the answer to that question is yes, absolutely, that school board member has the right to do that, right? That's among other things, they're politicians, which is a matter that, reasonable people can disagree about, but he said explicitly, and he's just a lawyer, we are politicians and we have a free speech right to begin with, right? State law, Vermont statutes specifically compare us to a legislative body. And so I think that it is true that we are elected officials, but I think we can also read into that we should be taking the role of representatives. And if you look at the state house or the Congress, individual members do advocate for individual things. So what I was suggesting was that I think that, for example, we could form a committee of the people, or at least some of the people who voted for the board, and they would actively advocate for it. And what that means, or we could also take an option, not form a committee, not do any board advocacy, but just the people who on the board voted for it should do individual political advocacy, which I think would be wonderful and valid. So I just wanted to provide a little bit more context about the concept of, on the one hand, speaking with one voice, and on the other hand, us as politicians.
I have another idea
Please.
option, which would be a board committee that really is trying to convey information. I mean, it's hard enough for us to try to explain the tax number than the state coming on top and adding a tax number. So I would say that it would be a great idea for the board committee to get the information out, the accurate information to.
Just said like.
Yes, but, and if people who did vote for it would like to do their own advocacy on top of that, they are welcome to do that as well. But I think this board makeup, I think the best idea is we all can agree that accurate information is the necessary thing for the voters to have.
And how does that relate to what Joe's doing? Because he is also on the information side.
It's
That's
just
exactly
another
what he's doing.
way to get
Yeah,
information, accurate information.
We could also say that the information that we are putting out is the information about how we arrived at this number, whereas Joe's role is information about how this number will be utilized, right? At the, so we can say, here's the information we have that led us to this number.
I would, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Lee. I would also like guidance from whatever that committee is about what questions are you getting, your community members here? What questions are you getting that we need to clarify, or what information isn't out there? I'm more than willing to, I'm pretty good at putting stuff together, and definitely I have access to the website and whatnot, but I need to hear from you what questions are out there, so I can get those answered.
I think that number how it's going to affect a condo and a house is something that is extremely, whatever it ends up being, it might be a number that isn't nice, but it's the number and it's like honesty and it's something people can understand. It's broken up 4 times. It's 400. That's where your
Well, they
parents-
usually give out, this is what it's gonna be for the year.
Right, that's what I mean.
Right,
They
right,
take
right.
that number and then say, how's this gonna split out? Which might 3.
So, well, generally that number is, that we have that by now.
I think that would be helpful. That's
And
something.
I have a calculator prepared,
Mhm.
again, with a huge red caveat that this number
And
will
that's the
change.
thing. Yeah,
right?
that's.
But people can even look up their own home value, put it in and see exactly how much their
Yeah,
taxes
you're-
go up.
It's like the city's money, they gave an approximate of what it's, to cost the condo and the home.
I have that ready to go
Based on
on a website.
specific values that were up there. So like when you look at the home, it was something around, the average home that they is estimated at 450,000 or something. So if your house is less, it's gonna be slightly less, more, slightly more, but it was an approximate.
What I don't have, I mean, almost half of the public gets that discount. I don't know how that is calculated or who.
So generally, in the
Well,
past,
that's
what
right.
we've done is that people are. Given the formula, you can figure that out on your own.
I mean, I know what the now, I mean, if your home is, or if your income is 115,400.
Right.
I'd qualify.
Right, you do, and because like I qualify, so but anybody can do the calculation of their own home. I remember Tim saying, we can't do everybody's. A house and.
No, I can do that, what I can't tell them is what.
Yeah, so it's approximate. And also, the other paper, I mean, we have not written an article for the other paper, we do have a slot once a month. So, that is another place.
And that might be another place, I mean, where, let's say that we form this committee, which I think we should probably vote to charge, or no, actually, we have that for the next meeting is the actual vote to charge the committee, if we want to do it, but, that might be a case where a board committee might choose to do a little bit more advocacy, that's, and not do so much just information, but also say, this is why we think this is why we came to this number, so.
Do we have just a clarification question? And I don't know if I'm misremembering or just overthinking it, but is it important or is it necessary and illegal to not proceed this way for those of us who are running for reelection? Is there like a window where we are not allowed to submit as a board member, or right, like there's because of campaigning, because of using our position to advocate for ourselves in any way? I'm not saying that would happen with advocating for, but there could be that
I think
possibility,
that's a
right?
good point, I think like you're not allowed to.
So maybe 3 people
It could be
who,
perceived as campaigning, I think that you want.
yeah.
Wait, what's wrong with campaign? Sorry.
Like writing one of the guest perspectives as a board member during the election window.
You could use your position.
You could use it. I've written, articles for the paper, there's.
Well, we shouldn't self-chill. If this is a question that you're interested in, we should ask the lawyers, because again. So.
I was
let's
just
ask
planning
the
on
lawyers.
not writing anything for that period, right? Like,
Don't write something, just have whoever is
Yeah.
not up
Not
for
running,
election,
yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, but don't self-chill. It is in this moment in our democracy, people need to hear from politicians and need to have the democratic process transparent and in their face.
Yeah.
So like, if you have a question about the legality of it, don't assume that the answer is no. Check with our lawyer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Because otherwise, I think the requirement would then fall to the 3 of us to be writing something, and perhaps we need your voices to be heard during this time. Or Austin, well, I'm saying, yes.
So I'll follow up on that if you're interested in.
It would be good to have clarity, just so we're,
happy to.
yeah.
I'm sharing with you right now the calculator that I put together. There's, I have not published yet. But it has the average condo assessment, the average house assessment. It has what the city rate is, it has what the school rate is, it has what the blended rate is. Right, and I also have a list here for the grant list, so you can go in and you can find your home.
Yes.
And
that's
find out
what we-
exactly what your property is worth. And I even color coded these based on, green and.
What were board members with?
Yeah. Oh, green is commercial, and so you can find what your number is, and then you can. I should not be in charge of.
It's great.
Nonetheless, you can add that, you can add your number in, it'll tell you what your rate's gonna be.
Is this on the
based
website?
No, it's not yet, I put it
Yeah.
together, I wanted to wait until we had a
Yeah,
discussion.
And maybe you could put income as an input, and then it would automatically adjust it for whether it was homestead or not.
It does,
I don't know anything technical, so don't ask me any
yeah,
questions.
no, Yeah, I don't know, is it a sliding scale? Is it like anybody under 115 gets the same discount, or is it?
But why don't you just put a disclaimer at the top
Yeah.
that people should check themselves, right, to say this.
Right, this isn't gonna apply to everybody.
Right.
Yeah, I will. I have that.
I'm just saying that like as an additional challenge that I'm sure somebody in your staff could handle,
Uh-huh.
like the calculation takes into account the homestead,
Uh-huh.
which is possible to do in Excel. So maybe you just include that and then somebody enters not only their house value, but also their income, and it tells the
Yeah,
number.
I can do that. So you-
But I like the idea of having a strategy. I like the idea of having a committee. Because I like a strategy. I mean, we've got in here a plan, but like, what is part of that plan? So perhaps it's picking up the website, as Joe indicates. And having this kind of tool, which would be great for people to see. But there's also going to be, you know, broadcasting information, whether it's on Facebook or Front Page Forum or Instagram or. You know, if we need
It's
to
all those
go
things, right? It's
hang
all
out
those things.
at sporting events and have a table at a sporting event, whatever, but like, what are the facets of outreach? And I am very much for providing information to people. Like, how can we inform the community? This is what we were charged with, and this is how we came at the number. And I do think that there is still a lot, I'm still not fully understanding the weighted average and how that changes and how the education fund has impacted us. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you're telling me there's some schools where the budget went up by 5%, but they're having a minus 1% impact to their property taxes. That doesn't make sense. People need to understand what is in our hands, what's out of our hands. Why is it that South Burlington is being impacted by all of this? So we have to be crystal clear on how that message is communicated, I think.
And there should be a separation of powers here between, you know, like the things that you're talking about, like making that point about.
Yeah.
How South Burlington pays for other school districts, that is not Joe's
No,
job,
I get
but
it.
it could,
I
but it
get
very
it.
well could be our job, and maybe that
Yeah.
doesn't count as advocacy, but it does count as political effective. Communication, so I have three things that I think we should consider, because this is just a discussion item. So the first thing is, do you guys want to put an action item on the next meeting agenda to charge a committee to do this?
Yes.
Okay. Is that
Yeah.
broad agreement on that? Okay. Another thing that we should consider earlier rather than later is whether we want to pay for a mailer of any kind. So we don't have to talk about that now, but we should think about, you know, whether we want to pay for a postcard to go out to everybody.
Not in today's day and age. I mean, you wanna get something out of everybody, you know, yellow paper. Another paper goes to every house, right?
Yeah.
Mail goes to every house, that's what you're patient about it.
My position hasn't changed on that since the last time we talked about it before we had a budget vote, which is, no, I don't think that's money well spent.
So I'm not gonna put an action item anywhere on spending money on a mailer. I will say in private industry, there's a renaissance of direct mail.
And most politicians do too, because they know it works. Even if that person holds it in their hand for 2 seconds, it goes into the recycling. It's still like a big part of the campaign.
So let's just think about it. We're just bringing up
I'm
for
not saying you're
as my old English teacher would say, throw it to the ghost in the basement for consideration.
great.
And then the third thing that I think we should be considering is, to what extent we should be front and center with the concept that we have a 0% budget ready if this one fails. This board might say, we don't want to mention that ever again, or the board doesn't want to mention it, even if individual members do. Or we could say, we want that to be like, you know, something that I've been saying as an individual person is, the board is doing a democratic experiment here. That's how I defend it, is I say, you know, we really want to know what's going on. So, something to think about is how much we want that to be front and center.
Can I propose
Of course, yeah.
something? I think we absolutely should mention that we considered both budgets and landed on this after careful consideration so that everybody knows we went through that exercise. I think we would undermine this number by saying, don't worry, we've got a 0% prepared, which motivates people to maybe vote this one down. We are prepared, and due to the good work that, you know, Joe and this and all of us have done, we are ready for that, but I don't think we should undermine this number by advertising that that is a ready and waiting second budget. I think we should say, we reviewed 2 budgets, we reviewed everything carefully, we chose this one for these reasons. Here are the factors that are contributing. So I think people should know we've done the effort on a 0% budget. I don't think we should tell them that we have it ready.
It's ready to go with this one there.
Right.
Yeah, I think they should know that they get one shot, one bite at the apple, right? If this board's decided that if this 3.4 fails, that they're going with a 0, I think people need to know that.
Okay, so you would say I'm sorry, that.
It's kind of the inverse of your point. It's like, it's not for people that are gonna vote no if we tell them. It's for people who are not gonna vote yes if we don't tell them.
So
Wow.
motivate.
Yeah, I didn't follow.
Yeah, sorry.
Vote if they want it, right?
If they want it, like Joe's saying, if you want the 3.4, you better vote because it's only going down.
Yep. And it's gonna be
Yeah, that's what I-
flat.
So that should be common knowledge.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not
never
going up.
gone up after.
Yeah.
Has it ever been the same? I mean,
I
I don't.
just over what I've looked at over the last decade, I think 3 times it took 3 votes. And each time it went down, but it's never stayed the same with Donna.
But they
Say well
did
with-
talk. I heard board discussion a couple of times during those failures. We could put it right back out there. So like 3.4 fails. It's technically an option, and I've heard it discussed, it's just, I think, but my memory is the same, as it didn't actually make
It'd
it
be
to the
surprising.
table. Yeah.
Okay, any other on that, on today? I'm sure we're gonna talk about it basically at every single board meeting going forward. Jean Marie,
Do you mind?
sure.
I just, wanted to say 2 things. One is it's January 21st, so we're running to like March 2nd.
We got less than 6 weeks.
Yeah, so I do whatever you wanna do, but like, let's not waste a lot of time making decisions on it when the committee's gonna get together, cause I know like that's hard, no matter the group that you are. So, that's the only, and I really like you people, but like less meetings in the evening with you all would not break my heart. So don't invite me to your. And, I think that the mailer is sort of normal operating business. I was anticipating that we were going down the road of a mailer. If you don't wanna do that, like, that's totally fine. I think that might be an unusual thing for the residents to not get a mailer, but
My recollection, the price tag on that was about 50K.
I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that the last one that went out, I mean, I got one in the district that I live in that was like a 8.5 by 11 card
Stapled.
stock, no, not stapled, but full color, both sides. Like the last one that I was anticipating, we would do a postcard, not a full size piece. And you could make it 1 or 2, you could reduce there are ways you can reduce the cost of a print document. So my thing here was to just say, well, we're running out of time. If we wanna do anything like that, because somebody's gonna have to create that, it's gotta go to a printer, it's gotta be mailed, and I don't know what the mail service is like in South Burlington, but in some towns, it's not super speedy.
We shouldn't drag our feet and then say, Jean Marie.
So that is an option for the board. If 2/3 of the board approves, we could amend the agenda and charge a committee right now. And so then we don't, I mean, because there's not a lot of, the purpose of warning meetings is to give the public a chance to give comments on things. This is not a particularly controversial thing for us to charge a committee.
I support.
So is the board interested in amending the agenda to include an action item to charge a committee for this?
Yes.
The implicit question there too is, are you prepared to volunteer for that committee?
I should not be on that committee.
Right, okay, so we're gonna amend the agenda, and we're gonna convert this into an action item to charge a committee for the budget communications plan. So, I think that we could leave the composition of the committee open and say, allow the board chair to decide. Or we could also bake it into the motion, who wants to be on the committee. I would also not like to be on the committee. Because I voted against the budget.
I would like to say, I think it would be great if we could have either Ally or Wednesday,
Sure, that wouldn't count towards our quorum,
right?
but we should also have you guys included as first class people.
Yeah.
No,
Is there interest in no pressure?
No, I would enjoy being a part of that conversation. I think both of us could bring great ideas to it.
So do we have 3 board members who are willing to volunteer for this committee?
I do not have the time. There's just too many meetings. I have a master's program. I teach full-time, like I cannot, like,
Does it have to be 3 people?
It doesn't have to be 3
I
people.
mean,
Do we have 2 people?
I mean, I don't have time
I
either,
do
but
not, I do not volunteer.
I can volunteer for.
Okay, so we have 1 board member currently on the committee that we're talking about for budget communication.
With 0 communications experience.
well, here's the thing, Emily, I can help, because in Essex, we send out a postcard, the union sends out a postcard, it's not that complicated. So I could.
And we can support too, like, I mean, if
I
you
mean,
come back
that's
to us
fine.
and say, we need X, the whole board can support you. It's just more a matter of like having a meeting this weekend to talk about, or talking with the superintendent, Jean Marie, and saying, these are the things we need, the whole board needs to do. It's more about organizing the board's effort than actually you have to prepare everything yourself.
And I can help too, I just can't take the lead. I can help too.
Why don't the 5 of us talk?
Okay.
And Austin is not going to.
Verbiage or, I could help with that.
And that's 4, so that.
No, Austin didn't help, you joined
I
the
did not
committee.
join.
He said he'd just help and support.
Well, you can help once the board is,
Yeah.
once you've reported back to the board then. Okay, so I would entertain a motion to charge a budget communication committee comprised of Emily and Laura and Jen, and that committee is,
And Momen and.
and Momen and
Ally.
Ally.
Yeah.
And that committee's, will end when they have reported back to the board necessary action steps for the board to take on the communication plan. Laura moves,
A second.
A second.
Emily seconds. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so we now have a board committee. Is there any more discussion on the budget communication plan?
Can I make one last comment?
Yes.
I just was going to say that last year, before the vote, we did like some real grassroots stuff. Like we did a honk and wave, the central office staff did, with some of the principals, did a honk and wave over here at the corner of Dorset Street. Like I think that some of those really low tech, high personal contact things are really successful in getting folks to turn out to vote for you. So like talking at a sporting event, and I think like you folks have talked about communication committees in the past and ways that you can connect with your constituents, like being at the dump on Saturday morning and those sorts of things. So I think that there's value in those things that are beyond.
Immense value.
Yeah, beyond, in addition to a mailer that you're not gonna catch everyone with any one thing, but I just wanna be supportive of those sorts of things.
I'll recommend that Jean Marie and I are the administrative liaisons to the communications.
Great.
Thanks,
One last budget communication thing that I forgot to mention, but I have heard from constituents, is that in their words, these are their words, not my words, they don't want the students to be weaponized. They don't want.
Hallelujah.
So like, and so my interpretation of what they were saying is, don't tell the students doom and gloom, everything's gonna fall apart if this budget fails, because that is problematic for parents to hear. So it's just something for the board to hear that I've heard from my constituents.
And it's not true,
And
in
what?
my opinion. And it's not true.
That everything will fall apart.
Right.
Right. Well, I'm just making the general comment of not necessarily using students as a vehicle to get the message out.
In any capacity, right,
Without any-
either side.
Without thinking about it very carefully.
Well, I mean, if students want to advocate on their own, they are welcome to
Oh,
do
yeah, of
that.
course they have free speech.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but, it's good feedback to understand what turns voters off. And so I appreciate you sharing.
Okay,
I
great.
think it's an important point because there's always been a pattern, right? As soon as that number goes on the ballot, we become camps of good and evil. And the students are in the center of that. And there's a lot of rhetoric and I think it's harmful. I don't think it promotes the kind of partnership that we all want to have. And it defeats the whole purpose of serving the students, so I agree.
Okay, so I'm ready. Next agenda item. Okay, so the next thing is planning for updating ends policy. And so I'm not gonna ask for an amendment to the agenda to charge committee tonight, but I was gonna suggest that maybe the right way to approach updating the ends policy is to have an ends policy committee that we could charge at a future. But let's just spend a couple minutes talking about the concept of updating the ends policy, why we want to do it, and just general interest in it.
What else been updated?
Absolutely disputed.
Yeah, it's
So
like 10
there's
years.
something else, but as far as talking about a committee to do, I want to wait until after the election.
That's what I'm gonna say. I would
Yeah.
agree with Dan, like, there's no point in doing that now. I've got 4 people running, 4 positions.
Yeah, it's a good
I
point.
just think it's not a good use of time.
We were having an internal discussion, the administrative team, and I firmly believe the ends need to be done before the strategic plan. And I also think that most likely that strategic planning will be like first semester next year, just because things
Right.
take a long time, you know what I mean? In a perfect world, it would all be done by the end of school. It's just not gonna happen. If we're gonna do it well and do it right, we shouldn't rush it.
Okay,
But if the board had a goal to get the ends done before August 1 or something, I think that's a reasonable goal.
Right.
Joe, would that goal serve your timeline well? Would that give you enough time to do strategic planning and then report? But like, maybe we could work backwards from what you and the team.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if that were to happen, I think our goal would to finish a strategic plan probably before Thanksgiving, before we start getting into budget season, you know, a couple months, probably 5 or 6 meetings with community, et cetera. And then, you know, January 1, this is the first semester of our new strategic plan.
okay, well then, go ahead.
I would just say, I mean, I'd like to circle back to the idea of getting a schedule out there that we have so that we can see a year at a glance. And what do we have insofar as our strategic plan, insofar as our ends policy, insofar as our monitoring reports, insofar as all of it. Like, I think it would be nice to have that in one pager so that we can actually see, and then we can be prepared and community can be prepared and understand what's coming on the pipe. So if we can maybe put that, I know I've brought this up before, and it doesn't have to be a Gantt or a Racy or whatever, but just have some kind of schedule for all of these things that we're talking about and putting it on a calendar so we know what's coming. So maybe we'll put that in the parking lot and.
I think we do need to, as a general thing on the school board website, have the addition that we've been talking about around, you know, listing out the dates, and for example, this date had a monitoring report, we had this result, and this date, like what we're discussing now, I think I'm happy to move on from this topic. Because I think what we've established for this ends policy update is let's try to have the board part of it done in August, for example, so that the superintendent can work on a strategic plan that's done by Thanksgiving. And now I know that if there were some. Yes, please.
Can I bring up one thing?
In one second, yeah, and I think if various community members who have been involved in this process in the past were here at this meeting, what they would say is, okay, guys, if you want to have your board's ends policies done in August, you have to start a community process in April or May. So, that's probably what we're
I think it's right, August 1. Right.
well, I mean, to get it done by August, we need to start.
Sure. Not.
It doesn't have to be August 1. I mean, it will be, the first committee meeting for the strategic plan will be the day after Labor Day.
That's literally about what I was gonna say, was that there needs to be enough time for the community to engage in it before the school year is over, and then the community is not going to engage as well over those summer months. So like it needs to be shown that there was like ample meetings.
Yes.
Or else it's not gonna seem like you're being transparent unless it.
That's a great point. Excellent.
So that's February, so maybe we'll put an item on the February 18th agenda to charge a committee.
Why don't you wait till after the vote?
After the vote.
So March 3rd. I think we have. a meeting.
March 3rd is the vote.
March 3rd, March 4th.
March 4th, okay, So we'll plan on talking about updating the ends policy again on March 4th. Great. Next item on the agenda. Is any more board comment on this? All right, next item on the agenda is the superintendent report.
Okay, so I want to talk to you today about these 3 Qs that I've been talking to you about for a long time now. I finally have wrapped up the 3Q process. Turns out that I ended up with 33 different meetings with 316 different participants. And I got a ton of feedback, that I took all of that and I used my friend AI and I entered it and asked AI to come up with what were the most common themes. And these are what those are. When I ask people, what do you most like about South Burlington schools? Dedicated and caring staff, rich diversity and inclusion, special education innovation, extracurricular and club options, strong sense of community, academic rigor and opportunities, supportive social emotional learning, positive transitions, intellectual freedom for educators, safe and welcoming environment. I asked people what were the 10 most, what were the most common themes that came up for what can we do better? Improve academic rigor and college readiness. So you're going to see some of these are in conflict, right? Address behavioral issues and discipline. Ensure special education compliance. Enhance budget transparency. Modernize facilities and cleanliness. Strengthen communication between central office and schools. Optimize transportation and busing. Provide better training for staff. Standardize resources across buildings. Improve student accountability. And the 10 most common items for what do you expect of your superintendent? And I couched it as this. I said, what do you need to see a year from now to think that the board made a decent decision hiring me? Maintain high visibility. Prioritize transparency and honesty. Foster collaboration and relationship building. Develop a long-term visionary plan. Ensure accountability for all. Oversee and align special education. Advocate for marginalized students. Continue effective communication, for example, the videos. Restore community pride and trust. Listen and respond to feedback. So those were the top 10 and all of those things. This afternoon, I sent out an email to our parents and staff. I put on our website a survey asking folks to go through these, and they are to select their top 3 for each one. And then of those 3, what is the highest priority? I also have spoken with South Burlington, and they're going to include the survey in the mailer or the email or the newsletter that they send to their 10,000 people on their mailing list. I want to ensure that we get people other than just families and staff members to complete the survey. And so that survey will be up for some time. I will send a few reminders, and after we have that data, I think that will be a good resource for the board to use as you create your ends policy. It'll be a good resource for me then to use as we do our strategic plan. So I'm really grateful to really all the people that I met in this process, all the feedback they gave. One thing is very clear: people in this district are very passionate about their schools. They want to do great for kids. They want to see South Burlington to be the premier school district in the state, and they were very, very clear about that. So thank you for your patience as I went through this, and I'm glad that part of it is done. I enjoyed it. I'm glad it's done.
Before I forget, you need to get that city mailing list that Joe just mentioned so that we can get our budget information on, because I get those emails from the city. I don't get anything from the school district, which is fine for the kids in school district.
Well, you should be on there as an employee.
It was, but not to my personal.
Okay, gotcha.
Whereas the city ones I get from my personal. So if we can get that city mailing list, which goes out to people in the city, send out our budget information to them.
And they may even send it for us. We have a really good working relationship now. They're very helpful.
in an email that goes out already, if they don't want it to be like just a South Burlington School District, then yeah, something, it's a good idea, conversation.
Yeah. So any questions about the 3Q process and what we're doing next with it? Any thoughts, advice?
I guess one thought is, how will you ever do a loop back with folks? Like, how are you going to re-engage with these folks? Like, you talked to them now and that was fantastic. Like, what do you see as follow-up?
Yep, I see a follow-up. Well, I think the next follow-up really is this process that we'll go through with the strategic planning and with the new EMS policy. And then after that comes out, I think that is at least an annual regathering, probably not 33 individual meetings, but a town, not a board meeting, a superintendent town hall, come in and let's talk about these. But more than one, right? Because people have different hours that they're available. Some people prefer to do it remote. So I think that's part of the program is you have to ask people how you're doing, right? So
I like
know
that
that's
idea.
nebulous, but it'll happen after the plan's done.
Well, now you have their contact information, so you could reach out and say, you know, because I do know that that was one thing that. I remember there was a discussion in donuts, and it was great for the people that are in the community that have kids in the schools, but it's how can you. Cast that net a little bit wider and include others, so something to think about, like quarterly touch points. Here,
Yeah.
wherever.
So front porch is completely new to me. I guess I understand it's just a New England thing. We only get 2 posts a month. And that's not enough. So that's why I've asked Delina for us to get our own account, so we would have many more posts. And from what I understand, people really look at that. That's their, again, Rotary says that's the most looked at social media.
Well, I really appreciate that you went out to people. You know, like it's hard to attract people to our events, so it's really great that you went out.
I'm curious if like, do you see people that you met at those events at like the grocery store or out in the community? I know you don't live in South Burlington, so you're not there so much, but it could have been just creating those relationships where you might see them somewhere and they'll be like, I know the superintendent.
Yeah, I do that. And I'll tell you the other thing that I've done, depending on the group and the size and the passion that they had, I've shared my personal cell phone number with a number of them. And there's, I'm not gonna say who the person is, but there's a Saturday at like 10 o'clock in the evening when I got a text from this gentleman who had a great idea about what the school could do. And I engaged with him for about 45 minutes, you know, and I can't even remember what the issue was or what we did about it, but the fact that I was communicating with him and felt like he had my ear, I think went a long way. So, yeah, I mean, I think that people are very pleased with changes that they're seeing and how we are not just communicating, but listening and having open doors and yeah, I think it's been well.
I have to say, I love Wolfie,
Yes.
oh my goodness, it's just a delight. And when I saw the social media post of you and the young student who won the book, it was just really heartwarming. And it's wonderful to see the connections that are being made and all the you know, I feel like sometimes a lot of emphasis is put on the high school, which is, it's a really important school. But I just love the way that I'm seeing you communicate with all the levels, all the grade levels, and doing something for everybody can feel like they're connecting with you, so.
I told Jim, it's my creative outlet, and you know, I was a camp director for a long time and a DJ, and that really scratches that itch.
You got the good voice thing going now.
Yeah, it sounds like every puppet I have sounds like Kermit.
All right, is there anything else that you want to, I think you mentioned a video that you might want to show. Doesn't have to be tonight, but, or you could send it out separately.
I put together I'll send it to you in the update this week. I used, again, an AI notebook LM to create a video that discusses our budget, tax rate is, and all of those kinds of things. And I shared it with a few people in the office who thought that it was presentable. So I want to I'll share it with you before I post it, but I think it's pretty well done. Yeah, it's does a lot of work for you.
It'll be helpful, yeah.
Great.
Thanks,
Any other
John.
questions or comments for the superintendent report? Okay. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda and planning. So the first item on that is to approve the minutes of the January 7th meeting. The next would be the account payables. So this is, Superintendent Clark, do you want, I never remember this part. Do you want us to have a formal action where I list out all these numbers? Or is it enough, since I'm on a consent agenda, just?
My understanding is a consent agenda is enough that when one motion and 1 second can approve all of these things unless somebody on the board wanted to remove one separately for a separate vote.
Okay, but we should I thought, okay, right, except for the AP voucher checks, right? Those guys we have to do separate. Okay, so does anybody have any comments about the accounts payables 1306 through 1338?
I don't have a comment, I just, well, maybe it's more of it is a comment. What did you ask?
No, anything.
Okay, so I did not know about Vermont's Act 166 because I happened to notice there were a lot of charges for that. And just for people who do not know about that, so it was passed in 2014, it established universal pre-kindergarten program for providing all 3, 4, and 5-year-olds not in kindergarten with access to 10 hours of publicly funded, high-quality pre-K per week for 35 weeks annually through mixed delivery system of public and private providers, ensuring all Vermont children get a strong start in early education regardless of family income. So because I noticed there were a lot of different, I mean, there were over, it looked like more than 30 different childcare providers that were taking in over 100 students. And I didn't realize that before. So I just thought that was an interesting observation. And I don't know if the community knows about that there are, obviously I think there's a lottery for kids to go to pre-K at some of the schools, but if they do not go to those schools, then they have the opportunity of attending these other facilities under Vermont Act 166. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we have 2 people on staff who work with those families to make sure that they're getting the support that they need and they interact with the liaisons with the private preschools.
Okay, so I guess that was one question was, is there anything, have we ever considered bringing them in-house? Because I'd be curious if there was ever like a cost benefit analysis, and maybe we don't have the space for it, but for sending them out versus bringing them in, and what would that cost look like? Because I was surprised, like some of these costs are pretty high. And is that monthly or is that, because I don't remember seeing that before on AP vouchers, and maybe I've just missed it.
I can't answer that question without looking more into it.
Okay,
As far as the bringing more kids into preschool, that absolutely would be a space thing and there would be some sort of cost analysis we need to do. Remember, we're doing the facilities usage study, and that will, I can ask them to make sure they look into that also, but really it's just a matter of space, right? How many classrooms do you have?
yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking from an outsourcing, like this is how much it is if we send them out versus if we brought them in, what would that be?
I mean, I could, my wife's a preschool teacher and she is a preschool teacher at a YMCA in Ohio. And I can tell her, I can tell you this, her salary compared to a certified teacher is nothing. Right, so I can't imagine that we would be able to educate preschool kids less expensively than other places, but it's always something we can look into.
And would you say, last question on this, would you say that, of the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in South Burlington that are eligible for this, it's not probably 100% that are actually doing it. Is it like, how is that decided? Like, is it just free preschool period?
It is free preschool and it is done on a lottery. And we, next year, I put in a word update, we're gonna have all of the preschool at Chamberlain, but we will ensure that we have the same number of kids from each attendance area selected for it. So Orchard and Marquardt kids will have the same chance to get into the program as Chamberlain kids will. And it's a free program.
But if they don't go to that program,
They
then
can,
they
you would
could-
pay for them to have 10 hours of service at another preschool program.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for asking questions about that important oversight. Responsibility. Any other questions about the accounts payables? Then we'll approve that by consent. Is there any objection? Okay, so those are approved. The payroll warrant number 14, are there any questions about that one?
No, the only thing I would do is I would just like to add, because I had to go back through. If we can just provide a description of what the Vermont Mechanical is for. Because I wasn't, okay, sorry, okay, sorry.
So any, on the AP
Sorry,
payroll,
warrant now.
okay. So then the next is an action item. I would entertain a motion to approve the AP voucher check to Howard Center in the amount of $162,445.57. Discuss it. Dan motions,
A second.
Emily seconds. Is there any discussion? Any board questions about the check that Howard Center?
Not specifically about this check, but I'll just note that I did ask Dr. Clark just for some clarifying information about how programs like the Howard Center fit in with our district investment plan. No issue approving this one, but it's just a program I'd like to learn more about, and I'm curious about how it fits with our long-term fiscal responsibility. What we consider that going forward.
Great question. I CC'd all of you on the response to Austin because it was such a good question. It's complex and it's a thing that every district does. That's not to say that that you shouldn't be asking those questions. And I'm sure we'll at some point be able to give you a report on exactly what does this mean in terms of staffing and students being served and those sorts of things. Thank you.
What monitoring report does Howard Center land in? Written students maybe, or?
I don't. Special education one would be that.
Okay.
Well, part of Howard Center would, where we send kids to their schools. But the Howard Center clinical clinicians that are in our schools would maybe be social emotional.
I'm looking up our board monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm reading this correctly, I don't think we have our special education monitoring report on the calendar.
Well, I'll follow.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
Any more board discussion? We're on a motion to approve the Howard Center check. All right, all those in favor? The motion passes. I would entertain a motion to approve the AP voucher check to Vermont Mechanical in the amount of $162,366.60.
With the motion.
Dan moves,
I'll second.
Laura seconds. Any discussion or question?
Joel?
Yes, so it would be helpful to have an explanation on the voucher that for what exactly that was for.
Kimberly, do you know offhand?
I am confident in saying it's not any one item, but it's a variety of invoices that have come in that have rolled up to the over 50K.
Yeah,
It
was
facilities
multiple.
work happens, as you know, adds up really quickly. So Vermont Mechanical's here a lot, doing work constantly on our system. So I can't say exactly what that was. Likely is the heating system.
It's like HVAC stuff, right?
HVAC.
Yeah, HVAC, for sure, HVAC, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking it would be helpful to have a little description because as we were going through, then I was going back trying to find what where there was detail, because I saw that it was for multiple invoices,
Several, yeah.
but it didn't have any description, that's all.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, the district hired me as the operations manager, not the finance person, and so I'm still getting up to speed with the rest of you, but, one of the things, I'm glad that you're asking these questions, because one of the things that our business office team is doing now is making sure that there's as much detail on here as you'd like, because we want to be as transparent as possible with you. So, like I said to Daisy, I'm pretty sure when it says AP payroll warrant number 14, there should be a number there of how much, like, I'm not sure all the information got onto the agenda for that, so I think we're still kind of working through, that's new for the folks that are creating the agenda, you know, having this information on there, so your point is valid, that I don't see any reason why we couldn't have a little, you know, asterisk there that this is, you know, 6 invoices each for that were for X, Y, and Z items or whatever. Yeah, so thank you for the feedback. I'm happy to bring that back to the team.
This one specifically looks like a combination of 8 invoices.
Yes, right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate that, please.
Yeah, they're really specifically doing HVAC work for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's all I would say is,
Yeah.
because then it would be helpful to say like, this is for.
Yeah.
HVAC work.
It does raise the concern that I had when we had only one bid for the boiler in Rick Marcotte from them.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, if there's no competition for our business, there's also no price pressure, you
Yeah.
know, on them.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm a little concerned about that, but it's not the right forum to talk about that.
You're welcome.
All those in favor? Aye, the motion passes. Is there any comment about the leave of absence? All right, that passes. February 4th agenda. So far what we've got on it. That's where. So. About that. Okay, great. So what we've got right now for February 4th is monitor 2.10 curriculum development and review, monitor 2.4 financial conditions and activities. So both of those are action items. And then discussion item, the Williston Road right-of-way request. This is the thing about behind Rick Marcotte Central School City. And then also another discussion item on the budget communication plan. The committee for which we charged tonight. And that is the only things on the Feb 4 agenda for now. And if you have any suggestions for other things to add, please let me know. I'm not gonna do the ends policy update today.
You had asked for a special education kind of report, Seamus, and I was hoping that we could do that February 18th. No, this one.
Yes, so there's no specific item on the superintendent's report right now.
I have.
But not monitor, right? Just.
No, not monitoring, just-
Oh.
yeah, just an update on special ed and, you know, just. You know. All right, any other future agenda items people want to hear about?
One that I've been thinking about, and I don't think there's any urgency around this, it's more one of those things would love to know more about as a board member, which is educator professional development, right? Just kind of some visibility into how we grow people. And how we, you know, create careers that are fulfilling. What does the professional development look like? Kind of your 3Q approach,
Sure.
what's working, what's not.
What monitor report?
It's not a monitoring report. This is just like one of those ad hoc.
We don't monitor
learning about-
professional development.
So-
We don't monitor professional development.
Is that coming under
No.
treatment staff?
That's concerning.
I'm on a professional development.
Yeah,
No, no.
I only make monitor in the sense of.
Operations.
Yeah.
How does operations?
Well, we monitor operations.
Yeah, and it's in support, treatment. center.
Treatment
Treatment
staff,
staff,
okay, great.
it's in treatment staff too.
But you're looking for more than that. You're looking for just an overall, view of what kind of PD do we do? How do we determine what PD we want to do? Those kinds of things. Right?
That's what I'm looking for. Tell me
Yeah.
if I'm not within my
Yeah, I
right as a
love that.
board
Yeah,
member to
something
ask for
smart.
that.
Sure.
I like it.
Write that down too. Okay, and that's it for the consent agenda and planning.
Is there anything else that we can talk about with trades opportunities? We had talked about that before, and I don't know.
Putting an
if it's in a
agenda
project-
item about
yeah,
trades.
there's something about the trades that we can circle back with and think about how we can.
So I think that might be an interesting thing to add to the discussion items for Feb 4, just understanding what is, because
It's available, what's out there, could be a good community forum.
my only concern, and this is only about scheduling, is that if we tie trade stuff in with ends updates, are there any kids this year who are gonna be, I mean, you know, like the 4 kids who couldn't get access to the HVAC program, has that ship sailed for this year? Like anything related? Yeah, so that's the thing about trades, so we can't, I think we have to be very prepared for next year. but
Yeah, I
we
mean,
can't help that much
Yeah,
this
and
year.
I mean, this is not to poo-poo the suggestion. I mean, we are our hands are pretty much tied with, these are the career technical centers that we're aligned with. And
Well, hold on, let's only discuss scheduling on this. Do we want to talk about trades on February 4th?
If I make a suggestion or a comment. That feels like something that would be a wonderful consideration for the ends policy as well, and that might affect scheduling. So I might put that out there, if this year is a somewhat big cake, so to speak. Maybe that conversation is best had either as a part of or on the other side of the end, we'll see.
Which I think we said we were gonna talk about on March 4th. So one of the big things about the ends
Okay.
policy for me is.
So put that in there as a quirky dot. Or the trades potential.
So on March 4th specifically mention the trades in the end policy update. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because there's so many things that we're gonna be talking
Yeah, yeah,
about,
yeah.
but it's like, I'm just interested in, let's start. Getting some details around, it's like, what are some other options that we can be considering? And we start putting kids with Vermont Mechanical, since we're spending so much money on that.
I love that.
What?
What?
Diesel mechanic.
Yeah, well,
As a part of this bid, you have to apprentice. You have
exactly.
to take on apprentices.
That's.
That's not- if it-
That's-
2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, if it's not illegal, do it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So my takeaway from that was that we're gonna add to February 4th meeting, a discussion of ends, March 4th. And we'll put like in the little example text, for example, trades and how ends policy would point more trades.
Yes.
Great. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait, first, does anybody want to have an executive session?
No.
Okay, great. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Laura moves. Austin seconds. Any discussion?
Look at you, Jen.
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
There's one here you all need to sign, so make sure you.